many of you may not know, we have village sites under the Pacific Ocean. We have rock fish trap sites that are in the desert. We are no strangers to climate change. When we come together and bring our native organic science epistemology along with Western science, Eastern science, all of our different sciences, and combine them, we all grow strong together. Thank you.
What a beautiful way to start the day in a beautiful place. But what struck me was what you said, we are no strangers to climate change. And here today we may think that this is something new to us. So thank you for that incredible reminder, Dr. Rodriguez. I want to thank NRDC, Azul, Ocean Discoveries, all of the partners that are here today. Obviously, I didn't plan exactly well. Thank you. It takes more than a village, let me say. I am thrilled to be here today. It is so important. I think I got it. Thank you. So I want to thank all the partners. It is incredible that you are here today to celebrate. You know, when I got to San Diego in 1985, I was struck by this view. One of the first places I came was to, of course, the ocean, having grown up inland. I have marveled at the magnificence of the California coast and its incredible 1,100 miles of shoreline that contains some of our Earth's most remarkable ecosystems and wildlife creatures. How can we not feel the significance of that? I have the incredible pleasure to represent the 39th Senate District, which currently includes San Diego's coastal communities. And during my tenure in the legislature, I have tried and I have aimed to be a good steward of our ocean environment. California is known for its global environmental leadership. A key achievement of its leadership is the establishment a decade ago of the first of its kind network of 124 marine protected areas. There are 11 MPAs in San Diego County, one of which is Matlahual State Marine Reserve, which was formerly known, and I'm glad we recognize the new name, the better name of the San Diego La Jolla Ecological Reserve. That sounds so clinical as opposed to the beautiful name that it is directly behind us. And I am going to take just a very quick moment of personal privilege to recognize the people who helped me do a better job. Deanna Spain is here. Deanna, where did you go? Deanna has been involved, for those of you that are local, you know that she has been involved in this effort for a very long time. And I am fortunate every single day that she works with me and that she is here on the ground paying close attention and working with all of you. So I think it's only right that we acknowledge the people that help us do the best work. MPAs effectively protect biodiversity and build resilience to ocean stressors like marine heat waves, which will only increase in the coming years and decades. MPAs are like an insurance policy, if you will, that helps safeguard marine life in the face of climate change. They offer varying levels of protection, which means they don't all protect marine life equally. This State Marine Reserve is a shining example of a fully protected MPA. And all of you in the crowd know what that means. I don't have to explain it, but I do think we need to, preach to the congregation or sing to the choir, as we used to say in Virginia, because it's a reminder to each of us the role that we play and the importance of what we do. So to protect biodiversity and strengthen climate resilience, scientists believe we must conserve at least 30% of the ocean and 30% of land and inland waters by 2030, a global goal known as 30 by 30. In 2020, Governor Newsom ensured that California would lead the way in this effort when he signed an executive order committing to 30 by 30 and that goal. This year, and this is great news, the legislature affirmed its support for this initiative with an investment of more than $750 million in new funding to advance 30 by 30. Now, I don't need to tell this crowd what $750 million means. It is very hard to get these resources, and so we should all celebrate and we should all be proud, because this funding is going to enable local and regional groups, those of you doing the real work on the ground, to expand environmental conservation across the state and expand practices that meet our climate, biodiversity, and equitable access goals. Strengthening and expanding the state's MPA network to create more fully protected reserves will help us reach our 30 by 30 goals, and will set a new global standard for protecting biodiversity, ensuring that all people have access to a healthy, a thriving ocean and all the benefits that it provides. So, ahead of the upcoming National United Nations Biodiversity Conference, it's important that we celebrate these achievements to date and commit, not just celebrate, but commit to do more, to do better, and to protect our precious marine resources for this and future generations to enjoy. And so with that, I have the real pleasure to introduce someone that I'm a huge fan of for many years, and that is California's Secretary of Natural Resources, Wade Crowfoot.
Well, boy, it is a pleasure and an honor to be here and to follow your state senator, Tony Atkins. Let's be honest, we have more funding than we've ever had to tackle the challenges we have in our coasts and oceans in California because of the Senate Pro Tem leader. We're far away from Sacramento, but if you know Sacramento, you know that when Senator Atkins sets a priority, it gets done. And we're hugely thankful for your leadership in this respect. Look, as we look out across the ocean here, it's easy to forget just how challenged our ocean is and the life within our ocean. We know carbon pollution continues to threaten the ocean. The ocean is absorbing more and more of that carbon dioxide. It's warming, it's becoming more acidic. And that's having real impact on the incredible diversity of life that the ocean provides for. California is known by scientists around the world as one of 36 biodiversity hotspots, which means we have a broader diversity of plants and animals and other life forms than almost anywhere else in the world. But we know that this natural richness is under threat. You know that the world across our planet is facing an extinction crisis that we've never experienced before, certainly since humans have been here. We are seeing species of animals, species of plants gone forever, month in and month out. And this is a crisis, I would argue, every bit as urgent and severe as climate change, and actually connected to climate change. And so next month, we'll be traveling to Montreal, Canada, for a meeting of the world's governments to try to come together and negotiate an agreement to stem this extinction crisis and protect this biodiversity. And coming from California, thanks to the leadership in the legislature, your leadership as advocates, we have an incredible model to share. We get to talk about this network of 124 underwater parks covering 16% of our state waters that has been selected by scientists for its protection of biodiversity. We get to talk about supporting the first tribal marine stewards network in our country, where coastal tribes are actually reestablishing leadership for taking care of these protected areas. We get to talk about spending almost $1 billion protecting our coastal communities from climate change and our fish and wildlife from these changes. And we get to talk about 30 by 30, which you heard from Senator Atkins is California's commitment to protect 30% of our lands and 30% of our coastal waters in the next 7 years. There is so much progress that we have made, and there's so much more work to do given the severity and the urgency of the crisis that we face. I'll say that with the marine protected areas, as you may hear from President Murray soon, we are undertaking a decadal review after 10 years of the marine protected areas. How are those protected areas performing? What are they doing for our environment? And then how do those who rely on our ocean, like the fishing community, how are they impacted by MPAs? And I can tell you, we're going to let the science lead in terms of the future of the MPAs, but we in the Newsom administration, certainly on behalf of Governor Newsom, are committed to doing more to protect, to conserve this incredible abundance of ocean resource that we have in California. And lastly, thanks to the advocates. You know, people like me come and go, but the advocacy of your organizations is the reason why there is a Marine Protected Area Network. It's the reason why there is upwards of over $750 million in the budget, and thank you. Appreciate that, and California appreciates your leadership. Next, I get to introduce Octavio Aburto from the Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
Well, my name is Octavio Aburto. I am a professor here at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography. I came 20 years ago to do my PhD here in the States. I am from Mexico, but as you can see, I never left. And I have been working with MPAs in Mexico, Latin America, but also here in California. And science has a very clear message. Fully protected areas are recovering marine biodiversity and are creating more ecosystem services or benefits for local communities and people that live in the coastal areas and for countries. The problem is that we don't have enough fully marine protected areas. The US has around 1,000 marine protected areas, and only 1.2% are fully protected areas. And 50 marine protected areas basically encompasses or include 99% of the 26% of the US coastal areas that are under an MPA. So we need to put more efforts to increase these fully protected areas, but I am very happy that especially here in California, the movement to join the 30 by 30 is moving in the right direction. The only thing that we need to start thinking, and I hope that I can help with all these efforts, is that many ecosystems like the ones that we have here in California, like kelp forests, don't stop in the borders. These ecosystems don't respect these kind of borders, so we need to create more efforts to bring different governments to work and tackle these issues in a collaborative way. So we need to start bringing other efforts to the south with Mexico to protect all these richness, all these species, especially the species that migrate from here to Mexico and then they come back. So I'm very happy that there is a lot of efforts to increase this protection, and I hope that also I can help doing that and moving in that direction. Thank you very much. And now, Samantha.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Samantha Murray. I'm the president of the California Fish and Game Commission, and I'm so honored to be here with you today, celebrating our statewide network of marine protected areas, which is the first in the nation to be comprehensive and driven by science. Secretary Crowfoot mentioned that some of us are going to these global international conferences to talk about things like biodiversity. Some of us are going to Egypt later this week to talk about climate change. And those conversations are important. And at the same time, I'm also reminded of how lucky I am to live in a place where we get to do such powerful work locally. We really get to show proof of concept that we can have a network of marine protected areas and have a $43 billion ocean economy. We can have the 5th biggest economy in the world and have protections in our water. 4th, we're moving on up. All right. Yeah, it's powerful, and I'm proud to see what we can do at a local level. We've never seen before. We've never had so many officers out on the water, watching what's happening on the water and enforcing our marine protected areas. And significantly, we have tribes leading from the front. That was not always the case for the Marine Protected Area Network, and it feels like I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, right? As we stand here at one of the only marine protected areas to be named in a local tribal language, in this case, the language of the Kumeyaay people. The law that called for the creation of marine protected areas was silent on tribes, like many environmental laws, and that was a social justice oversight. Since that time, we have seen tribes demonstrating incredible, extraordinary strength and power and leadership in multiple ocean and coastal venues. And one of those is in management and leadership of our Marine Protected Area Network, including in the monitoring efforts that Secretary Crowfoot mentioned too. So I think that's powerful. It feels appropriate to reflect on how far we've come on that issue too, especially as we stand here at Matlahual State Marine Reserve, and as we open this conversation with Dr. Stan Rodriguez, and we close it again with Stan Rodriguez. So thank you so much for all of your work in the audience, and to everyone up here on the panel. And with that, I will hand it back over to Stan.
Ladies and gentlemen, bienvenue à pays, the place of the caves. Again, this land which is sacred to our people. And as we have our native scholars, es porque ustedes saben, nosotros tenemos problemas en otro lado, ¿verdad? Con la vaquilla, allá en la Mar de Cortés. ¿Cuántos vive ahorita? No sabe, ¿verdad? Let me translate. So anyway, yes, there's problems on both sides of the border. And what can be done? We have to work together. We have to work together because in the end, we have a saying that this earth is our mother. And we have a reciprocal relationship with our mother. We love our mother and our mother loves us back. But what happens when we just take and take and take and abuse and abuse and abuse? What happens? Our mother becomes sick. And what happens when we become sick? We get a fever. Everything that's happening, we already know. The last thing I'm going to say before I shut my snoot, I'm going to tell you, there's part of our creation story. It talks about a young man coming down from the mountains to ask the Creator for knowledge. But in his path was a huge snake. We like snakes, but sometimes they can be rough. This snake, the blood was gold, and the spit was silver, and its urine continued to fill the Pacific Ocean. And it was bent on destruction. It swallowed this young man. He broke off the teeth, cut himself out, grabbed this huge snake by the tail, and flung him to the north where it froze. And they said, do not touch the blood because it will make people go crazy. Do not touch that silver because it will make people go crazy. Watch out for that snake. It froze. They said if that snake ever unfroze, it would wreak havoc upon humanity. We're starting to see global warming. But there are things that we can still do today.
I've noticed outside of those reserves the things that I don't see. I think we hear about loss of kelp. We hear about the loss of sea stars through sea star wasting disease. And these are things that make news. But I also notice the things that people don't really notice. They're not the things that I necessarily am fishing for fishing, or cool charismatic things like dolphins and things like that you might see while surfing. But there are little things like little snails, little gobies, small little fish that don't necessarily have the attention.
Don't live along the coastline care about protection of areas like this?
Well, because the ocean belongs to everybody. I think that we have seen with the with this societal change that we've had in the pandemic, and when we were very in lockdown, etc., we realized, and it's come to us, that nature is something that we need. It's not a privilege; it's a necessity. We all really felt it. And you have people that are, they drive 2 hours to the ocean, they come in from another place, and the ocean belongs to everybody. California is, the only state that actually has all those beaches open, and that speaks to the testament of that investment California has had for, decades. I'm a proud member of the Coastal Conservancy, so I'm very excited for this new funds coming and how that will be used to both protect and open more access and facilitate more access to the ocean. But But I think that, people, whether they are, 155 miles from here or they're driving at 300 miles an hour, it's important for everybody, and we need to make sure that we continue to protect and expand that.
So what does it mean though to have more fully protected rifles? What does that mean? And I guess I'm also selfishly asking because I am a member of the Coastal Commission, so I need to know what that will entail. Maybe Wade, do you have some?
Well, I'd also turn it to President Murray, but we protected these 124 parks, enabled through legislation, but then identified through, I think, the regulatory power of the Fish and Game Commission. So the Fish and Game Commission then has power to adjust that network, potentially expanding that network, and it will do so based on the science that's been synthesized around how have these marine protected areas performed, and then also how have they impacted the ocean economy. So that process is actually taking place in the next handful of months, where the Fish and Game Commission will be considering that scientific review. And then, as President Murray said, really helping chart the future of the protected areas. From our perspective, I think this network has to change over time, and it has to adapt to all of the threats that it faces. Again, which could mean more protected areas, it could mean adjusting boundaries, but from my perspective, we really need to be driven by the science in all that we do.
Thank you so much for that, Secretary. Yeah, exactly as he said, we are 10 years in on our full network, and what we're going to do over the next year is look at the 4 core pillars of our MPA management program, right? So that's outreach and education, that's monitoring and science, that's enforcement and compliance, and that's policy making and regulations, right? So it's all 4 of those things taken together comprehensively, and we're going to look at all the information we've been collecting. It's a lot of information that we've been collecting over the last decade, and see how we've been measuring up, knowing that 10 years, as I said, is nothing, right? When we're talking about species that live to be 150 years or longer, it's early days on our MPA network. But what happens next? We are the authority that actually makes the regulations and makes the MPAs real in the water. But what happens next is up to you, right? It's up to the state of California to decide, where do we want to go next? It's all the agencies I mentioned and the tribes that I mentioned, but it's also the people, right? So we want to know what the people of California want, regardless of where they live, as we think about the next 10, 50, 100 years.
Thank you. I was just going to close out, thank you, and say a couple of things. One, California is uniquely situated. We have advocates on the ground, very strong organizations represented here today, the advocates. But we have the Coastal Commission, Ocean Protection Council, the Conservancy, Fish and Game. We have a very, very engaged natural resources in the administration. But we also have Scripps. We in California are so fortunate to have that resource that helps us be a global leader. And I'm just so proud of our community in California and here locally, because Smith, you said it so beautifully when you talked about the inclusion of the sovereign tribes and the role that they play. When we have all of these stakeholders working together, this is the success. And I can never thank Scripps enough for the education they have given me. I am a legislator. I know this much about a lot of things, but I don't have to. All I have to do is turn to my community and turn to Scripps and know that we have that resource here. And when you go to Canada in the coming weeks and to Egypt, what we're doing is real, but we are also aspirational because we are behind. And so celebrate all that you're doing and all that we are able to do together. We would not have access to the coast without the Coastal Commission and the decades of work of the Coastal Commission. We would not have public access. So day by day, some of these organizations, some people love to hate because they got one little issue. but it's that bigger vision. It's that bigger vision and that aspiration that we have that starts right here on the ground with all of these partners. So thank you for pulling this together for us today. I'm of course going to turn it over to one of our sovereign leaders to close us out.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. And before I close this out, I just want to say that when you're talking about let the scientists run with this. Don't discount the native scientists. Our own organic scholars, our native epistemology is a big part of this, because this is where it comes from. So, in order to close this, what I wanted to do was I wanted to ask one of my tribal members who has been crowned Miss Kumeyaay. She is our own Miss Kumeyaay for this year. Her name is Priscilla Ortiz. She graduated from Haskell Indian College.
I'm going to take some wise words from Stan's son, Wabanero. Mayahan Yehan. Thank you guys. May Creator bless us.